This is the story of a Unitarian Universalist fellowship in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and how we took our values to the public square. I'm the Reverend Lisa Romantum Schwartz, and I'll start with a little history to put things in context. The Winston-Salem Fellowship was founded in 1951 by Southern liberals who felt a need to gather together and raise their children in a faith free from fear. Pictured here is Monroe Husbands, the visionary Unitarian lay leader, and the joyous group he helped found. It wasn't all fun and games. Back in the 50s, the fellowship's leaders publicly supported school integration after the Brown v. Board of Education decision by the Supreme Court, and they took bold stands on women's rights and other access and justice issues. By the 70s, the group had bought a small house and begun to use it as a meeting space. And in the 80s, the fellowship built on that small house a meeting space. They felt they'd never outgrow their comfortable home. Thank goodness that assessment was wrong. By the 90s, the fellowship had grown so much that it was necessary to buy a larger lot, and the new building was completed in 1997. Here's a more recent picture, just after we added solar panels, but that's a different story. It's been a busy and thriving group ever since, and we've continued to stand for racial justice and LGBTQ justice and the separation of church and state. We started the city's first Earth Day fair. The first one was in our parking lot, and today it's a community-wide event held at the county fairground. Of course, we still find joy being together and love to laugh and have fun together. We celebrate holidays and holy days that have meaning for us. And we mourn together when the fabric of our larger society is torn by violence and fear. We reach out to the community in less public ways, like when we collect stuffed animals for the police and social services to give to kids in traumatic situations. Still, since 1951, the fellowship in Winston-Salem has witnessed publicly on the side of love, boldly and unapologetically. We always have a booth at the annual Pride Festival with giveaways and fun games. Our fellowship is visible in marches and demonstrations throughout the state, and we sent a whole busload to the first Women's March in Washington, D.C. In 2015, a federal judge said that North Carolina's voting districts targeted African Americans with almost surgical precision, and we responded to the call of the Reverend Dr. William Barber and the UUA, and Winston-Salem Unitarian Universalist hosted our siblings in faith from 37 different states during a national voting rights march. As Susan Frederick Gray says, this is no time for a casual faith. That same year, in 2015, our fellowship put up a small sign in our wayside pulpit. It said, "Black Lives Matter." It wasn't without controversy. One of our members came to the board and announced that he didn't like the sign, and if it wasn't removed, he'd resign his membership. The board took a collective breath and said, "We'll miss you. We hope you stay connected." After that small sign was vandalized and we got some crank calls, what could we do besides make the sign bigger and bolder? Onto the front of the building it went, in UU yellow, "Black Lives Matter." We are aware of our privilege as a predominantly white congregation. We put the sign up in part because if a black church in our town posted this over the door, they'd likely be met with fire and fury. We can't deny our privilege. Let's use it, offer it up for the greater good. Let this sign be a reminder for us each time we enter this space that we, as a congregation and as a nation, have work to do. It wasn't long before the sign was stolen, but we had a spare, and we replaced it within 24 hours. Soon it disappeared again. The sign was always taken in the middle of the night, in a cowardly act. And always we'd have it back up within 24 hours. We installed inexpensive cameras trained on the front of our building. Then one Sunday morning our early arrivers were greeted not just by the absence of the sign, but by the presence of racially tinged graffiti. The cameras had captured 3 white teenaged males with hoodies on and faces obscured, defacing our building and stealing the sign. This time we called the press. We talked about the gut-wrenching feeling our members of color had experienced. We talked about our congregation's ongoing commitment to the message and the movement. Local press took photos of volunteers cleaning the building and replacing the sign once again. By that afternoon, local clergy had begun to call and offer support. Christian and Jews, black and white, the Winston-Salem community reached out to us with love and support. The local predominantly black ministers' conference, of which I am a member, said our congregation had consistently been present for the black community and that they were prepared to be present for us. They held a press conference on our behalf, and there was coverage in both the local daily paper and the black weekly paper. The following day, our congregation hosted a press conference. It was well attended by community leaders, clergy and politicians, and many concerned citizens. Black ministers said, "In the face of an act like this, we're all Unitarian Universalists." And a white minister said, "The question isn't why does this church display a Black Lives Matter banner, but why don't all of us have one?" Since that day, 4 more predominantly white churches in Winston-Salem have hung those banners at their own congregations. It's amazing how an act that was meant to desecrate our space and diminish our message has worked to help build unity in our southern city. And thanks to social media, we started hearing from Unitarian Universalists all around the country. They sent love and encouragement and even donations so we could repaint the damaged part of our building and, of course, make sure we always have a spare banner on hand. Local folks reached out too. We didn't even know that the downtown First Presbyterian Church had a Sunday school class called Justice in Jesus, but they reached out in love and support too. A nearby Episcopal church gave us their offering one Sunday. A UU congregation in New Jersey sent us a pound of fairly traded coffee as a gesture of fellowship. And the UU church in Lexington, Kentucky sent a beautiful handmade banner. We quickly put it up right over the fireplace, where it still hangs today. We've all learned a lot. As a minister who's preached about the interconnected web of existence for nearly a quarter of a century, I've felt the power of the web of human connection more acutely than ever. And of course, we're UUs. Our congregation's members are not unanimous in their embrace of the banner, and we do talk about when it might come down and how to visibly support other justice issues. And just like we always have, we still find joy in being together, in laughing and loving, caring and sharing. That's what gets us through the tough times, even when tensions are high and there's a lot at stake. We know this is no time for a casual faith, and we're privileged to continue to make this bold proclamation: Black Lives Matter. We are grateful for all who support us in our efforts to side with love.